It was the middle of November, and I had flown down to spend a week at my aunt's beach house in Myrtle Beach. She'd offered it to me for free while she was overseas, and I didn't hesitate. The place was perfect, a quiet, two-story home with a wraparound porch, perched on a street lined with palm trees, and only a short walk to the sand. I went there expecting peace. I'd been feeling worn out from work, craving a break from the cold back home. I imagined mornings spent watching the sun rise over the ocean, and nights with nothing but the sound of the waves to keep me company. The first few days were exactly that. I woke late, walked the beach, and spent hours curled up on the porch with a blanket and a cup of tea, reading or watching movies on my tablet. The street itself was calm, with only the occasional neighbor walking their dog or a car quietly rolling past. By the fourth night, I had settled into a comfortable routine. That evening was particularly quiet. No wind, no cars, no voices from the nearby houses. The kind of quiet where you could hear your own breathing. Around 11:45, I decided to sit on the porch one last time before bed. The porch lights cast a pale circle around the front steps, but beyond that, the street was swallowed in dim, patchy lighting from the old street lamps. I had been scrolling on my tablet for maybe 10 minutes when I noticed something strange. Across the street, just beyond the reach of one of the flickering lamps, someone was standing perfectly still. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, or maybe a neighbor I hadn't met yet. But then I saw the outline. Tall, thin, unmoving. I waited for them to move, but they didn't. They just stood there, facing directly toward me. I tried to convince myself they weren't looking at me specifically. Maybe they were on their phone, or just lost in thought. But something about their stillness made my stomach knot. "Hello?" I called out finally, trying to sound casual. There was no answer. They didn't shift, didn't wave, didn't take a step. They just stood there. My skin prickled. I stood up, thinking maybe I should go inside, when they tilted their head to the side. A slow, unnatural tilt, like they were studying me. Then, in one slow, deliberate motion, they raised an arm and pointed directly at me. My voice caught in my throat. "Do you need something?" I asked. That's when they spoke. Their voice was low, but clear enough to carry across the street. "I'm going to come see you." Every muscle in my body tensed. I took a step back toward the door, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. The figure began walking across the street. Not running, not even walking like a normal person. Their steps were oddly smooth, like they were gliding forward. The streetlight flickered above them, and for a moment, their face disappeared into shadow. I bolted inside, shutting and locking the door. I pulled the blinds shut and stood there, listening, my breath quick and shallow. I told myself to grab my phone and call the police, but before I could, there was a loud, heavy bang on the front door. The whole frame shook. Then another bang, louder. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. The banging didn't stop. It got faster, harder, like whoever it was trying to break the door down. And then the noise changed. The pounding turned into a slow scraping sound, metal dragging across wood. A knife. I could picture it in my mind, tip digging into the door, carving downward. The voice came again, this time lower, darker, like a growl. "You're not leaving." I backed toward the kitchen, keeping my eyes fixed on the door. I wanted to run upstairs, but I didn't want to take my eyes off that entrance for a second. The scraping became stabbing, quick, violent jabs into the wood. Each hit made the door shake. Finally, I managed to press call on my phone. Just as I put it to my ear, everything went silent. The quiet was worse than the banging. I didn't dare move. I waited, straining to hear anything. Footsteps, breathing, the creak of the porch. But there was nothing. I crept to the window and pulled back the blind just an inch. The street was empty. No one stood under the street lamp now. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. They checked the area but found no one. On the front door, there were at least a dozen deep gouges, all the same shape and size. Long, clean cuts like they'd been made with a single sharp blade. One officer told me it could have been a drifter, someone high or unstable. But when I described how they moved and the way their voice sounded, his expression changed. He didn't say anything else, just told me to stay somewhere else for the night. I packed my things right then and went to a hotel. I didn't step foot on that porch again. When my aunt came home a week later, she called me. I told her the whole story. She listened quietly and then said something that chilled me even more. "That's not the first time," she said. "The neighbor across the street told me last year they saw a tall man standing out front in the middle of the night, just watching. He was gone by the time they called me about it." To this day, I don't know who or what came to my door that night, but I know for sure one thing. If I had stayed out there a minute longer, I might not be here to tell the story. When my mom died 3 years ago, everything in our lives shifted. My dad said the old family house, the one his parents had left behind, would be a fresh start for all of us. It was bigger, quieter, and far away from the city noise. But quiet isn't what it turned out to be. It's just me, my 2 younger brothers, Liam, who's 11, and Tommy, who's 4, and my dad. At first, we tried to make the place feel like home. We painted our rooms, unpacked boxes, and even set up a play area in the backyard. But there was something strange about the house. The air upstairs was always cooler, almost damp, like the windows had been left open in the dead of winter, even when they were locked shut. The floors groaned under invisible weight when no one was walking on them. The first incident happened 2 weeks after we moved in. I came home from school early because of a canceled class. The house should have been empty. Dad was still at work, Liam was at practice, and Tommy was at daycare. But as I walked up the stairs, I heard the faint sound of drawers opening and closing. It was coming from Liam's room. The door was cracked open just enough for me to peek inside. Every single one of his drawers was pulled out, and clothes were flung across the floor as if someone had been frantically searching for something. No one was in there. I stepped inside and looked around, my heart pounding. The air in the room felt heavy, like someone had just been there but slipped away before I came in. Then I heard it, a loud thud directly above me in the attic that Dad kept locked. I froze. The sound wasn't just a random creak, it was deliberate, like something heavy had been dropped. I ran out, slammed Liam's door, and went to my room. When I told Dad about it later, he dismissed it, saying maybe Liam had made the mess earlier. But I know Liam. He's messy, sure, but not like that. A few days later, Tommy started waking up crying in the middle of the night. At first, Dad thought it was nightmares, but Tommy told me in his tiny, trembling voice that the tall man came into his room. He said the man didn't talk, just stood there at the foot of his bed, breathing. I tried to convince myself it was just his imagination, until I saw it myself. It was around 2 in the morning. I was half asleep when I heard Tommy's door creak open down the hall. I sat up, listening. The hallway was dimly lit by the moonlight seeping through the upstairs window, and in that pale glow, I saw a figure, tall, thin, and unnaturally still, step into Tommy's room. I couldn't move for a few seconds, my body locked in fear. Then the figure turned, glancing toward me. I swear I saw the faint outline of a face, too pale to belong to anyone I knew. And then it was gone, slipping back into the hallway, vanishing into the shadows. When I rushed to check, Tommy was sitting up in bed, clutching his blanket, wide-eyed and shaking. "He was here again," he whispered. From then on, I started hearing other things. Whispers outside my bedroom door, too quiet to make out but urgent, like someone was speaking in a language I didn't understand. Slow footsteps in the hallway when everyone was asleep. The sound of something dragging along the floor above my ceiling at night. One night, I decided to stay up and keep watch. I sat in bed with my phone in my hand, the screen dimmed. Around 1:30 a.m., the air in my room shifted. The temperature dropped suddenly, and I could see my breath. My door handle twitched, not just once, but slowly, like someone was trying to turn it without making noise. I stayed completely still, my heart beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. The handle stopped moving. Then my door creaked open just enough for the hallway light to spill in. A hand, thin, bony, and pale, gripped the edge of the door. It lingered there for a moment, and then the door swung shut again. I didn't sleep after that. 2 days ago was the breaking point. Dad was working late, Liam was at a friend's house, and I was watching Tommy in the living room. I went to the kitchen to grab him some juice, and when I came back, he was gone. I called out for him and heard his voice faintly upstairs. I ran up and found him standing in the hallway outside the attic door, the one that's always locked. Except now it wasn't. The door was open just a crack, darkness spilling out. Tommy was staring into it, whispering, "He wants me to go with him." I yanked him away and slammed the attic door shut. I checked. There was no key in the lock, no sign of how it had opened. That night, I pushed my dresser in front of my bedroom door before sleeping. But last night, even with the door blocked, I woke up with the crushing feeling that someone was standing over me. The air smelled stale, like dust and something rotten. I opened my eyes just enough to see a shadow against the wall, tall and unmoving. And then, in the faint moonlight, I saw it bend closer, its face tilting toward mine. The eyes were nothing but deep black pits. When I blinked, it was gone. But the smell lingered until morning. I don't know what's in this house, but I know one thing for certain. It's not just watching us anymore. It's waiting. I had been looking forward to that trip for months. Just me, my pickup, and the empty back roads of Wyoming. No cell service, no deadlines, no people. Just the grind of tires on dirt, the smell of pine, and the cold mountain air. I'd packed light, a sleeping bag, a camping stove, a few protein bars, and a small cooler. The plan was simple: drive as far into the wilderness as possible, camp overnight, and be the first to see the sunrise from a spot most people would never even know existed. By late afternoon, I'd been following an old trail called Black Hollow Road. I'd read about it in an off-roading forum. It was barely mentioned anywhere else, and the guys who had posted about it called it remote enough that you'll think twice about breaking down there. That was exactly what I wanted. The trail itself was narrow, overgrown in places, and littered with jagged rocks. My suspension complained with every dip and rut, but the views more than made up for it. Massive green valleys, the occasional stream cutting through the earth, and mountain ridges turning gold under the sinking sun. By the time twilight hit, I found a clearing just off the trail, a small patch of flat ground surrounded by thick trees, with just enough space to turn my truck around if I needed to. It was perfect. I backed in, so the nose of the truck faced the way I came. It wasn't paranoia, just habit. Easier to leave in a hurry if I had to. I killed the engine. The world went still. It was one of those silences so deep that you can hear your own heartbeat if you pay attention. I climbed into the back of the truck, unrolled my sleeping bag, and tossed in an extra blanket. My dinner was a granola bar and a swig of lukewarm water. The air smelled faintly of sap and damp soil. When night fully set in, I switched on my LED light bar for a few minutes, just to check the area. The beam lit up the surrounding trees in a harsh, almost unnatural white. Their shadows looked like they were leaning toward me. I shut it off. Darkness swallowed everything instantly. It was cold, but not unbearable. I lay down, zipped the bag up to my chin, and listened to the forest. A chorus of crickets, the occasional snap of a branch far away, the low groan of trees shifting in the wind. Peaceful, until the laughter. It was faint at first. So faint I thought it might have been a bird call, or maybe the wind playing tricks on me. But it didn't sound like either. It was a single short burst of laughter, low and sharp. It didn't belong out here. I lifted my head, listening hard. The forest went silent again, the crickets suddenly gone, as if they'd decided they didn't want to make noise anymore. A minute later, it came again, louder, closer. This time there was no mistaking it. A human voice. One person. My skin prickled. I reached for the flashlight in my pack but stopped myself. I didn't want to make it obvious that I was here. I told myself it could be another camper, maybe even a hunter passing through. But the trail was rough, and there hadn't been another vehicle all day. The third time I heard it, it wasn't just laughter. It was a voice, low and drawn out, saying something I couldn't quite understand. It didn't sound rushed or desperate. It sounded deliberate. I stayed perfectly still, my eyes straining to see through the black. The voice came again, clearer now, almost conversational, like it was speaking directly to me. "You're not alone out here." Every muscle in my body tightened. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might give me away. Then came the sound of slow, heavy footsteps in the dirt. Not running, not stumbling, but walking with purpose. Crunch, 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 each step closer than the last. I couldn't take it anymore. My fight or flight response was screaming at me to move, but I stayed frozen, my mind clinging to the absurd idea that if I didn't move, they wouldn't see me. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, bang. A single deafening hit against the driver's side window made me flinch so violently I almost ripped the sleeping bag open. My flashlight tumbled somewhere out of reach. I didn't even try to grab it. Adrenaline took over. I lunged into the front seat, slamming my knee into the console and jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, shattering the night. I floored it, the truck jerking forward over the uneven ground, tires spitting dirt and gravel. The beam of my headlights swept over the trees as I sped down the trail. For a split second, I thought I saw something pale moving between them, keeping pace with me. But it could have been my imagination. I didn't dare slow down to check. The trail felt endless. Every bump threw me against the seatbelt. I kept glancing in the mirrors, half expecting to see a figure running after me, but all I saw was darkness swallowing the road. When I finally hit pavement, I didn't stop. I drove for an hour, hands locked on the wheel, eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds. Only when I spotted the neon vacancy sign of a roadside motel did I finally pull over. Inside, behind the locked door of my room, I sat on the bed and tried to convince myself it was just someone messing around. But deep down, I knew. Whoever they weren't lost. They weren't asking for help. They wanted me to know they were there. And if I'd stayed a minute longer, I think I would have found out exactly why. I've always been a light sleeper. The smallest creak in the floorboards, a neighbor's dog barking outside, even the hum of the refrigerator from down the hall. It all finds its way into my dreams and pulls me back into consciousness. For most of my life, that's been more of an annoyance than anything else. But a few months ago, that sensitivity became something far more terrifying. It was Thursday night, edging into early Friday morning. I'd been pushing myself for days, working late into the night on back-to-back projects. Deadlines were stacked like dominoes, and I was barely keeping up. Coffee had long since stopped keeping me alert, my hands trembling slightly whenever I tried to type. I'd been running on fumes for so long that I couldn't remember the last time I'd had a proper night's sleep. That night, I finished my final task for the week, some late client revisions, at around 2:45 a.m. I remember the relief that washed over me as I clicked send on the email. My eyes burned with exhaustion. My body felt like lead. I didn't even bother changing out of the clothes I'd been wearing all day. I just switched off my laptop, flicked off the light, and collapsed onto the bed. Sleep didn't come gently. There was no peaceful drifting. One moment, I was staring at the ceiling, and the next, I was somewhere else entirely. In the dream, I was walking down a long, sterile hospital corridor, the kind of hallway where the lights hum faintly overhead and the air smells faintly of disinfectant. The walls weren't clean, though. They were covered in long, jagged shadows that seemed to crawl and shift, even though nothing in the hall was moving. I couldn't hear my own footsteps. I couldn't even hear myself breathing. The only sound was this faint whispering, so quiet I couldn't make out the words. It was like dozens of voices murmuring just out of reach. Every door I passed had a small square window, the kind they put in hospital or school doors, and in each window, someone was standing perfectly still, watching me. Their faces were pale, their expressions completely blank. Their eyes followed me as I walked by. I kept moving, my pace quickening without me realizing it. Something deep inside me was screaming to get out of there. That's when I saw it. At the very end of the hallway, an elevator. Its metal doors slid open without a sound. Inside, the walls were dark and reflective, like a mirror in low light. In the center stood a man facing the corner. His arms hung at his sides, fingers twitching slightly, head tilted at an unnatural angle like his neck had been broken. I froze. Without moving his feet, he began to turn toward me. His head rotated first, slow and deliberate, until his face came into view. I woke up, or at least I thought I did. I was in my bed, my own room, the familiar outline of my bookshelf against the wall, my desk in the corner. But something was wrong. My body wouldn't move. It was like an invisible weight was pressing me into the mattress. My chest rose and fell in shallow, panicked breaths. I knew instantly I was in sleep paralysis. Then I saw it. Near my closet door, in the darkest corner of the room, something was standing there. Tall. Too tall. Its head was nearly grazing the ceiling, and its arms hung so low that its fingertips almost brushed the floor. At first, it was completely still. Then, with a horrible jerking motion, it began to walk toward me. Each step was slow and deliberate, but its joints bent the wrong way, like its knees and elbows had been assembled backwards. The sound it made wasn't footsteps. It was a faint scraping, as though its feet were dragging across the floor. It stopped at the foot of my bed. I wanted to shut my eyes, but I couldn't even do that. Slowly, it leaned forward, lowering itself toward me. Its face was smooth, featureless. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just pale, stretched skin. And yet, somehow, I could hear it breathing, a wet, rattling sound that grew louder with each passing second. I could feel the air shift as it hovered over me. Every nerve in my body screamed to move, to fight, to run, but I was trapped. My heart pounded so violently I thought it might burst out of my chest. Then, without warning, it moved closer, so close that its faceless head was just inches from mine. The rattling breath became a low, guttural growl that vibrated in my ears. And then, I could move again. I shot upright, gasping for air. My blanket slid to the floor. My room was silent, empty. The closet door was shut. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Since that night, I've kept my closet door locked before I go to bed. I tell myself it's just for peace of mind. But deep down, I'm not sure it matters. Because whatever I saw that night, I don't think it came from the closet.